Hey everyone, today I am speaking with Dr. James Doty. He is a clinical professor at the Department of Neurosurgery at Stanford University School of Medicine, and he is also the founding father and director of the Center for Compassion and Altruism Research and Education at Stanford University, of which His Holiness the Dalai Lama is the founding benefactor. Dr. Doty works with scientists from a number of disciplines examining the neural basis for compassion and altruism. But Dr. Doty also wrote a book called Into the Magic Shop, a neurosurgeon's quest to discover the mysteries of the brain and the secrets of the heart. And that is why I'm talking to him today. And it was an honor to be able to sit down with Dr. Doty and just pick his brain about compassion and stepping into the magic shop. I really think you're going to love this conversation. If you haven't heard about Dr. Doty, you need to listen to this and then check out his book, Into the Magic Shop. It's a life-changing book. All right, guys, thanks so much for listening. Enjoy the show. Pull up a chair and buckle up. It's the Original Strength BodCast. I have probably, well, no, I definitely have read 32 books since last March.
Wow.
And well, the COVID gave me
Oh,
time.
actually, I thought you were thinking this March, but you mean, or this
Last
March?
March.
Oh, okay.
No, like
A year.
2020
Yeah,
March.
right, right.
2020
Okay,
March.
I got it. That seems more possible. The other, man, you're reading fast.
No. Well, if you knew me, 32 is miraculous since last March. But of all the books, one of the ones I've enjoyed the most is Into the Magic Shop. That is a very powerful book. Um, it's neat because to me, reading your life story and everything you have been through and done through the lessons you learned from Ruth, it just kind of makes me want to be a better person. Like it just makes me want to do better.
Well, I appreciate that, and that's kind of you to say that. And interestingly enough, I had no particular desire to write a book. In fact, the story behind that is that I had been approached many times and always refused. One, because I didn't feel I had enough time. Two, uh, I had never met a literary agent who sort of, I'm not sure if the word trusted is the correct term, but who I felt comfortable with. And what happened was I was in Cape Town in South Africa at Desmond Tutu's 80th birthday. And it was an extraordinary event, as you can imagine. It spanned over 3 days. The first day had a church service. He's the emeritus pastor at St. George's Church. So the present pastor had a church ceremony. Our Bono was there, which again was quite amazing. And then the next day there was a book signing party, and his daughter had done a book with a journalist. It's one of those coffee table picture books about his life. And there are about 200 people there. He signed books, of course. And a fellow came up and introduced himself. And the only reason I remember was because he was tall and a handsome guy, because I mean, literally, tens and tens of people there. And I'm sure, like you go to an event, a social event like that, from people with people from all over, and in all likelihood you're never going to see them again, so it doesn't really stick in your mind. And when I got back to California, I was giving a lecture at Stanford, and I looked out in the audience, and lo and behold, that same guy was in the audience. And I was like, wow, that's strange. And I meant to talk to him, but I was inundated with people after my lecture, and when I looked up, he was gone. And that happened actually a second time, a month or two later, and gone again. And the third time I ran into him actually was I was hosting an event at my house, um, a book launch party for another friend of mine, and I did not make the guest list. And lo and behold, this guy shows up again. And this time he comes up to me and he introduces himself. He says, we met in Cape Town. Um, I've been following you for 3 years. I've listened to all your lectures, your videos, and he says, I think you have a powerful message, and I'm a literary agent, and I wanted to ask you if you'd consider doing a book with me. And then he added the following sentence, which I love my father. He's elderly and has been sick, and I've shown him videos of yours, and he was very moved. And I'd love to do this book as a gift to my father. He knew how to sort of manipulate me. So
That was a strong sell.
yeah. So I said, sure. And imagine I did not Google him. I didn't do anything. I just said sure. And it turns out he was Tutu's literary agent, as well as Mandela's, as well as Richard Branson's and others. And more recently, Jane Goodall. And so a lot of prominent people. So anyway, that led to he and I working together, and we spent about 3 months outlining the book. And then about a year and a half or so actually writing the book. So it was a fairly long process. And like I said, I didn't really have the time to do it. So what I ended up doing was waking up at 5 every morning and writing for a couple hours. And this went on for obviously some time. So.
Well, you did a phenomenal job. It's a great, it's such a wonderful mix of your story, but then you also throw in these scientifical, just amazing nuggets about how the body works, and the way you weave it together. I mean, it just kind of hooks you, where you just want to keep going with it.
Yeah, it's interesting because again, like I said, I never had any desire to write a book. And once I agreed to it, my feeling was, look, if it can help one person, that's perfectly fine. But what happened was it became a New York Times bestseller. It's won numerous awards. It's translated into, I think, 40 languages now. It's a bestseller in multiple languages, or multiple countries, I should say. And interestingly enough, there's a K-pop band you may have heard of called BTS.
Yes.
Yeah, so they actually used my book as the basis for their third album, Love Yourself Tear. And there's a song in that album called Magic Shop. And them actually doing that and making that association really pushed sales, not only in South Korea, where it became a #1 bestseller, but all over the world, actually.
That's amazing.
Yeah, no, it's that's and what's even more interesting is I probably can't say the name of the movie star, but there's a very prominent what is it, A-lister who has actually optioned the rights to the book for a movie. So
Oh, wow.
so that's sort of in progress at the moment.
Now that's exciting.
Yeah.
And I get it, because it is, like I said, this is one of the, out of the 32 books I've read, that one, like, it makes me want to be a better person, to reach for more. It's just so neat. Have you, and I'm sure you thought about this in a staggering way, but do you ever just get like starstruck by, or just, that's not the right word, but just amazed, just knocked off your rocker by the chance that you met Ruth going into that magic shop, and how it impacted your, like that had to be like winning the lottery 5 times or something. It's weird.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because people will say to me, well, uh, with your personality and your drive, were you destined anyway to do all the things you've done? And of course, we can never know, but I certainly feel that Ruth certainly helped me dramatically and really did set the stage and put me on the path to do what I've done. And I'm not sure that would have happened without her. But of course, you never know. Now, the interesting thing is that, and I think you may recall it from the book, um, her grandson was supposed to visit that summer. And what happened was that the parents got their divorce, and they got into a fight, and the mother refused to send the child. And so, and that's why the grandmother was there, the owner's, the magic shop's mother. That's why she was there, to be with her grandson. And he was, I think, 10 at the time. And in some ways, I think I substituted for him.
No, I think that makes perfect sense. But it was beautiful though, the way that she poured into you every day that you showed up. It's beautiful that you showed up. But
Well, well, that's an interesting point because for a 12-year-old to agree to that and actually do it is somewhat unusual. But there were two things. One is she made me feel very safe, and I had nothing else to do. And actually, there were three things. And the third thing was that she actually was feeding me Chips Ahoy chocolate chip cookies. So those were the motivators for me to show up every day.
well, she knew what she was doing.
Exactly, exactly.
So, can I ask you of the four magic tricks that she taught you in the magic shop? The one that I'm most curious about is the one that you came back around to at the end of the book was opening the heart. Can, how do you open the heart?
Well, I think um, almost all of us in childhood have been traumatized in some way or another. And you don't have to be poor to be traumatized. Oftentimes, your parents' behaviors are a manifestation of the baggage that they carry. And many of us assume that parents are perfect or that they're doing the right thing or they know what's right, et cetera, et cetera. And they end up traumatizing us, not necessarily because they intentionally mean to do so, but they don't have the resources, the tools, the insights, et cetera, et cetera. And so in my own situation, of course, my father was an alcoholic, and my mother had had a stroke, was partially paralyzed, chronically depressed. And after this period of time with Ruth, instead of having the anger and hostility and despair and hopelessness, I recognized that their actions really were not about me per se. They were just having their own struggles, trying to assuage their own pain. And that was manifested oftentimes by not acting towards me or my siblings in an appropriate way. Um, and so I didn't have anger about that. So when we talk about opening one's heart, you have to understand what are your drivers, and what is holding you back from actually having unconditional love for another person. Now, certainly, if it's your sibling, or parent, or somebody you're close to, that's a lot easier than having unconditional love for maybe a coworker or the person on the street, or even certainly someone who's done harm to you or other people. But when you look at your own situation and what has hurt you, what causes you pain, of course, it's people who have not demonstrated an open heart towards you. And so, if you can sit with that and understand those people's actions, and in some ways, if you will, feel the pain that they have that is causing them to not be so nice oftentimes, then you can reflect on yourself and ask yourself, how would I want to be treated in this particular way? There's a quote that actually is falsely attributed to what's his name? Viktor Frankl. And the quote is, between stimulus and response, there's a pause, and within that pause lies your freedom. And in some ways, this relates to that because oftentimes events occur and we have a tendency to immediately be reactive to those events, especially negative events, and not really think. But if you pause a bit, you go from this reactive response, which is a manifestation of your sympathetic nervous system, to shifting over to your parasympathetic nervous system. Because when your sympathetic nervous system is engaged, this fight, flight, or freeze response, it is putting you in survival mode. and you immediately make a decision, but it's not necessarily the right decision. When you're able to shift and be more thoughtful, take a little bit more time, you find you're much more thoughtful and discerning, because when your parasympathetic nervous system is engaged, what happens is that those areas in your brain that manifest by engagement of your executive control function, which gives you access to memories, experiences that you've had in the past, insights, wisdom, then you make a decision that is much more thoughtful. And it's taking that pause, which, for many of us takes several years to develop, that muscle, if you will, or that understanding. So when you're able to pause and think about it, you're much more likely to make the right decision and not be reactive, not be fearful, not be anxious. So I think that's one of the most important lessons each of us can learn.
So for the parasympathetic nervous system, along with rest and digest, it's kind of also like the love and compassion system, maybe.
Sure, or you can call it care and concern, or a number of adjectives, because in some ways, this should be our baseline. And unfortunately, it's not in modern society, but our DNA hasn't changed in the last 200,000 years. So if you think about it, when we were on the savannah in Africa and weren't engaged with survival, let's say, and was in a safe space, the parasympathetic nervous system dominated. And the sympathetic nervous system was used for an immediate response to threat. And once that threat was gone, then your various physiologic events that occur when you're stressed and anxious, such as high blood pressure, increased heart rate, diversion of blood from your gastrointestinal tract, your skeletal muscle, your pupils dilating, all of that stuff, which engage you to run away, if you will, or respond to threat, those are only meant to occur very transiently. So they occur and then you come back down to baseline. Unfortunately, for many people in modern society, that system is chronically engaged, and as a result has a very deleterious effect on us. And this can be as a result of a depression of your immune system, the production of inflammatory proteins, which are associated with chronic disease states, elevated cortisol and stress hormones, which have an effect on your physiology. Also, it stresses your heart. So there are a whole variety of responses when you're stressed and anxious. But your baseline really is to be calm, to be open, to feel, if you will, safe, especially psychologically safe. And when you're in that position, that's when your physiology works its best.
So I'm sure I probably don't fully understand this, but when you were talking about opening the heart in the book, you also went into the really cool uh, facts about the body, that the heart kind of has like its own brain, and it actually talks to our brain.
Sure. So the autonomic nervous system, which is that system that works not necessarily with our input whatsoever, but automatically beneath the radar of our consciousness, is manifested within the vagus nerve. And within that is the sympathetic nervous system fibers and the parasympathetic nervous system fibers. And it's not a one-way street from the brainstem to all the vital organs in the body, especially the heart, but it's a two-way street. So there is also communication between the heart and the brain, of course. And it can have a huge impact on your physiology, as well as have an impact on other organs in your body. And that stimulation can come directly from the heart itself. So it is a two-way communication, if you will.
Awesome. So along with writing Into the Magic Shop, you're the founder of the Center for Compassion and Altruism Research and Education, CCARE.
Right.
Can't, what is C-Care?
Well, you just mentioned it, but it's a center within the School of Medicine at Stanford, which I founded in 2008, and of which the Dalai Lama is the founding benefactor. And what happened was I had been involved in various business ventures and had actually left the state to actually help a indigent indigenous anyway, a hospital for the poor in southern Mississippi build a program. And I had left there ultimately and came back to California and came back to Stanford. And when I came back, I was very interested in this topic of what drives people to do good or care for others and what impedes that. And so when I came back, I initially funded the center myself. And I gathered some scientists together, primarily psychologists and neuroscientists, to have a conversation about this topic and to look up the literature and ultimately actually to have a journal club. And it was interesting in conversations with these individuals, the statement or understanding was that if you studied compassion or empathy or altruism, that study was actually a dead end for you if you wish to advance in an academic environment. Regardless, though, and like many scientists, if someone's paying for the research, you're happy to do the research. And so this began a informal, what we call Project Compassion. And we began some fairly simple studies. We did a survey of the literature, and it was amazing because very quickly we found that, if you will, having an open heart, being compassionate to yourself, being compassionate to others, had a huge impact, not only on yourself, but those around you in a rippling effect. And in fact, the Dalai Lama says being compassionate is one of the few times it's okay to be selfish. And what he meant by that was that when you're compassionate and kind to others, you actually receive benefit. And I think that's very true. So the center was founded in that way, and we ultimately ended up having a number of benefactors, not only the Dalai Lama, but two individuals actually from China. And I say that because, of course, there's antagonism between the country of China and the Dalai Lama. But each of those individuals donated $1 million and funded the center initially. And then we set up lecture series for academics to visit and speak who were experts in these fields. We ended up doing a program called Conversations on Compassion, where I would sit up on stage with someone who has dedicated their lives, if you will, to compassion, be that a scientist, be it a business person, be it a spiritual or religious person. And we also, of course, did a number of research studies and developed different programs and techniques to help individuals be more self-compassionate and compassionate. And those are now taught all through the world. Actually, we're doing a program right now that has representation from, I think, 80 countries in the world. And that's an ongoing program, which I think is backlogged about 3 years. So it's actually become a fairly extensive program. C-Care also published the Oxford University Handbook of Compassion Science, which has become the Bible for this area of study, and I'm the senior editor of that. And then many of the individuals who have been involved in C-Care, many people who've done either sabbaticals with us or were fellows with us for 6 months to a year, have gone on to publish a large amount of literature in this field as well. And so it's had, I think, a huge impact. In fact, now there are over, I think, 50 centers throughout the world who are focused in this area, where when I started it, really there were people doing some research, but it was very limited. And certainly there were no centers whatsoever focused in these areas.
That's amazing. You're like the spearhead for compassion in the world.
Well, it's funny. I've given talks all over the world about this, and obviously it means a great deal to me. But I think it is important. And I have always said that it's compassion that will save the world. The other extraordinary thing is, through this work, of course, I met the Dalai Lama and ultimately became the chairman of the Dalai Lama Foundation. But equally as important is that I've been able to develop relationships with many of the world's leading spiritual leaders, including Amma, the hugging saint, including Desmond Tutu, Thich Nhat Hanh, Sri Sri Ravi Shankar, Sadhguru, and a number of others.
That I don't even know what to say to that. That's amazing. I well, thank you for writing Into the Magic Shop. I know that the entire world is blessed because you lost your magic thumb that day.
Exactly. It's funny because, I probably get 200 or 300 emails a day from people who've read the book, been moved by the book, etc. But a number of them have either sent me bags of Chips Ahoy cookies or plastic thumbs. So it's been sort of funny.
Well, I know it's got to be so amazing, and I'm sure that you sleep very good at night for all the experience you've had and the things you've done and the change you've made.
Well, look, I appreciate that I'm extraordinarily blessed, and that at least in most cases, things have worked out well for me. I don't want to imply that you read my book and suddenly your life is perfect and you're in control of everything, because that's not true at all. But what the book does do is it gives you a set of tools that do allow you to develop some degree of agency and have some insight into those things that often hold each of us back from being our best selves, and a set of tools and practices that allow you to become your best self. But none of us are perfect. We all have setbacks. And while on the one hand, of course, people love listing all the positive things, there are a number of things that I would have liked to have done or done better, that just haven't happened. And it's not because the intention wasn't there. It's just sometimes it's not the right timing, or there are some other reasons that have not allowed that to happen. But as anyone who has been successful or seemingly successful overnight, people forget the 1,000 failures or efforts they've made that did not manifest with success, because people, of course, have a tendency to only look at the good stuff and not necessarily see the other struggles you've had. Now, on that note, many people have asked me to write another book, or when is the next book coming out? And actually, I've just finished that.
Awesome.
Yeah, so that book is tentatively titled Out of the Magic Shop, The Power of Intention. And what we're doing now is, so the rough draft is done. Now we're creating a packet to send to the initial publisher to see if they're interested in publishing it. And if not, then it will go to auction. And I'm fairly confident that a publisher will pick it up. So
I'm fairly confident that you are correct. Yes, sir.
well, it's funny. You may or may not know two things. One is, most books that are published, there typically is no advance or very limited, especially for a first-time author. And then the other thing is that the average book number of books that are published for that first round, believe it or not, on average are only about 2,500.
Wow.
Believe it or not, all the books that are published, 90 some percent, I think it's 94% of profits in the publishing industry are made on 6% of the books.
Wow, I did
So
not know
yeah,
that.
it's a very strange business model. But that being said, the reason I bring that up is that actually I was given a multi six-figure advance for my book, uh, and they published, I think, 50 or 100,000 copies up front, because obviously they felt it was going to be a popular book. So,
And they knew what they were doing.
well, if you're publishing 94% failures, I'm not sure about that. But I would tell you, of course, this is analogous to the venture capital world, right?
Right.
90 some percent of all their investments fail. Now, what I think is interesting is if you simply put on a dartboard all the various projects that have come to you and simply threw a dart, or multiple darts, I'm not sure if the results would be any different than the results that they actually have. Now, that is biased because there are companies that clearly are going to have an impact, and a number of sort of the big name VC firms, get access to those, but that's because they have a history, right, of that, and that's why they go there. But I certainly think for the average VC firm, you could just throw darts and come up with something.
Yeah, but your entire story from 1968 to even how this book was published, like that guy was stalking you for a reason.
That is true. Actually, I just got a text from him a little bit earlier today, talking about getting the book to the publisher, or the outline, if you will.
Well, I look forward to the release of that book after someone picks it up, and I know they will. Dr. Doty, this has been wonderful. I really do appreciate you sharing your time with me. This has been fantastic. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're at home, do yourself a favor, get into the magic shop. You cannot read that book and not want to be a better person or to be your best self. Might not all be roses, but you can be your best self.
Exactly. And I think there are a couple points, there are 3 points to emphasize. One is you can check out our website at ccare.stanford.edu. And there are also a number of programs, as well as actually on YouTube, a number of videos from our conversations on compassion, which I think a lot of people would appreciate. Uh, Two is everyone has the ability to improve the life of one person every day. And, a lot of people sit there and they say, well, I don't have the time, I don't have the resources, I don't know people. But sometimes it's simply a smile. And when you give to others, when you're of service to others, again, as I was saying earlier, it not only helps them, but it helps you. And we all have the time to do that. And the third thing is, what was the third thing? I can't remember it at the moment. I'm sure as soon as we finish, I'll remember it.
The
But
first two were pretty strong.
yeah, yes, there was a third one. Where did it go? Well, I'm sure it'll come to me at some point. Um, well, listen, thank you for having me. And if any of your listeners want to reach out, you can drop me an email at jrdoty@stanford.edu. Now, I always say that, and sometimes I get a lot of email. But the reality is some people are really suffering. And in that context, I try as best as I can to at least answer in some way to those individuals, because, when you're hurting, when you're in pain, uh, when you're suffering, just having someone acknowledge you oftentimes can be life-saving.
Wow. That that's got to be the third thing. That's amazing.
I guess it is, Dow.
Thank you so much for
Sure.
your care and compassion, Dr. Doty.
Okay, my friend. Take care of yourself.
You too.
Thanks for listening, everyone. Have a great weekend.